now that we have the video predicting who gets the number one seed in the NFC out of the way, it's time for the main event in Baltimore and Pittsburgh, who gets the sneaky fourth seed in the AFC and who's eliminated from the playoffs. So, very stressful game, and thankfully for Pittsburgh, they have the great Aaron Rodgers. Who more do you want in an important game than 59-year-old Aaron Rodgers? So that is going to be a very interesting matchup, him versus injured Lamar or Pro Bowler Tyler Huntley. That's great stuff all around. So with that, preliminary discussion out there, this is going to be, which quarterback is less bad and which team carries more. I don't think there's really any way around that, assuming Lamar isn't, at full strength, in which case he could do some damage himself. But I think for the most part, you predict that the quarterbacks are kind of just going to be chilling. Rodgers, some people think he's been okay this year. Those people are wrong. He's not putting up yards. He's not, doing anything, to be completely honest, aside from getting rid of the ball very quickly, which is not really too beneficial since the Steelers' line has been good, but it at least does neutralize the fact that he has no mobility whatsoever and doesn't really push the ball deep downfield. So that's at least one thing he does have going for him. He's not really putting the ball in harm's way, which kind of hard to do when you get rid of the ball in a second, 2 yards downfield, but he's doing that at least. He doesn't have much play action help, which is odd since the Steelers do run the ball well, but he just doesn't really run play action too much over the years, so I think that's probably more of him being, not really easy to work with and just kind of running one scheme, so I think that's more what it is than anything else. Despite the fact that they're not getting the ball deep downfield ever, they are not very good at getting the chains moved. They have a super low 43% success rate for Rodgers. You want to be around like 50% or so, where you have a productive play is what that translates to. They're not getting that, so they're not generating deep downfield, but they're also not really consistently moving the ball. So that is rough, but again, the 2.6 time to throw is great. That's about as low as you're going to see for any quarterback. They tend to say, 2.5 seconds is what the line can give you. So they're never going above that, really. It's never really any extended play. It is always pretty much Rodgers just getting the ball out as soon as he gets it. So that paired with the Ravens not generating any pressure on their own, that is going to mean that Rodgers should be kept pretty well clean, especially because, as I mentioned before, the Steelers have a good offensive line. They are 5th in PFF pass blocking grade. That is great. And it's also great that the Ravens don't generate pressure against anybody. So that's a very nice combination. They should also have some relief from pressure in the sense that they are 8th in running expected points added. So they are very effective with the ground game. That's an Arthur Smith special right there, one of my fave coordinators out there. So that is really good for minimizing the pressure. They're not going to be in too many passing situations, you figure, despite the Ravens being 4th in run defense expected points added. So it will be good on good in that sense. But you figure you're still going to have some pretty good situations to work with, especially because in the times you are passing, you're probably not going to have pressure, be it Rodgers getting rid of it or the Ravens just not knowing how to get after the passer. So lots of interesting things there. The Steelers play in a very unconventional way, so you always do have something interesting. The one rough thing for them, though, is that the Ravens don't blitz, which is a fun combination. You can't generate pressure with a 4-man rush, and you also don't blitz. But in this sense, it kind of works to their benefit because Rodgers is 29th when teams don't blitz, according to PFF. And the Ravens are very middle of the road in blitzing. They're 16th in blitz percentage. So Rodgers is going to have to earn it. He's not just going to have somebody open for a 2-yard pass that they can get some run after catch going for. That is how he's done any damage this year, is run after the catch. He is far and away the most predicated on run after the catch. He has 15 expected points added from run after the catch. The top 3 guys are like in that 10 or so range, so 15 is huge. For comparison, Lamar has -6, 21-point EPA swing in that regard, so there is a lot of run after the catch benefit going to Rodgers, but there won't be any really blitzing opportunities to get that going, so they are going to be dinking and dunking, but they won't be getting too much, you figure, after the catch, because the Ravens are playing things pretty honestly. So there is the pass rushing stuff aside for Pittsburgh. Receiver-wise, they are really going to be in good old Pittsburgh Steelers form with just trying to get you into the water and, win a war of attrition, basically. They do not have any talent to speak of in the receiving realm, with DK being a total numbskull and attacking a fan who didn't use racial slurs. That's important to notice. There's videos on it that shows he was lying about that. So DK, they trade for him because they didn't want Pickens drama. DK does something dumber than Pickens ever has, and he's also just the much worse player as expected, so that's really funny. The one thing they do have going for them, though, is they do still have some tight end talent to work with. Freiermuth is 19th in tight end yards per route run. Jonnu Smith, always a fan favorite with Arthur Smith, probably because they're brothers. Not really. If you know what they look like, you know that's not true. But Jonnu Smith, he's 46th in tight end yards per route run. Sucks that Darnell Washington's hurt. That could be another guy. He's, I believe, 9th. So they would have 3 tight ends in the top 50, which, yeah, 46 is not great, but, I'll take that for a third guy for sure. So injury there does suck for them. That is a pivotal part of their offense, in addition to establishing the run that he gives them by being, another offensive line size guy. So it will be ran pretty much entirely tight end and running back for the Steelers, beyond even what it normally is, with DK adding, a little bit of something with the 2 routes he knows. So that is going to make for an even muddier affair. It is going to be a lot of quick, short stuff, and then, it's tight ends with it, not elusive wide receivers. So you're going to need to see some great stuff from Warren. Muth, I think, is going to have to get you probably like 60 or so yards, which doesn't sound like the craziest thing, but that's not always guaranteed, especially with, the tight end being known to be the lead guy they're going to. And Freiermuth is a good tight end. He's not elite. So that's pretty difficult. It is going to have to be an ugly game for them. And we'll see if they can get that done, because what is making it ugly as well is the fact that the Ravens match up pretty darn well in what they can do to make things even more exaggerated, where Chidobe Awuzie, unfortunately not having the DK Metcalf matchup. Awuzie is 3rd in PFF man coverage grade. The Ravens don't run a whole lot of man. The Steelers do, but the Ravens don't. But, in key downs, you would see Awuzie versus DK, which would be great. So that sucks that we're not getting that. Maybe we'll see some kind of weird stuff where Awuzie does, get against Freiermuth, since they realize he's their only real threat for consistent receiving. So that could be fun. You could still see some good on good, and you could see a weird size matchup in that regard. Freiermuth being like 6'5", 265, Awuzie being like 6 foot, 200 pounds maybe. So that could be fun to see. Wiggins, another guy, just kind of gonna be out there chilling, I guess. He's a good corner as well, and Humphrey as well, but they just don't really have anything to match up with. So it's good on bad. I guess that's going to make things interesting to see if there's just no one open at any point aside from potentially tight ends. It'll be interesting to see how much the Ravens do sell out to stop that, because, even with DK, you can really say, don't let the tight ends beat us and be pretty well set, but especially without him, I think you might see some egregious type of things, and I think you're going to see a lot of 2 or, maybe 3 tight end situations. You could have Hayward out there as, another guy. They like to run the 6th offensive lineman, so really going to be ugly stuff from the Steelers. And, the good thing is you will see some good matchups with Hamilton on Freiermuth a lot. That's going to be, something that you see continually. You're going to see Starks on Jonnu, you figure, as well. So that is some good on good that you can at least get out of this. The one thing that is helpful, though, again, is that the line is going to be giving them time to get the receivers, probably some secondary route running going, because the first stuff is probably not going to be there. So it will be on Rodgers to feel that and, accept that, not just get rid of the ball immediately, to realize he is going to have time. You have Jones on the edge and then Travis Jones in the interior, so you have a little bit of Jones action going on for the Ravens. Travis much better. He is going to have the more favorable matchup as well. The interior for the Steelers can be a little bit more susceptible because, honestly, with Broderick Jones not at left tackle, the line has been pretty good in the tackle department. So Fatanu has been really good as, kind of his rookie year. So there's not going to be too much, you figure, for the stuff regarding the edge, which is not really great for Baltimore in the first place. So Travis Jones, the interior, is going to have to be really big, 22nd in pass rush productivity according to PFF. So he at least does have something going for him there, but it's not an easy matchup because the interior is a little bit weaker for the Steelers, but it's still not a weakness. As for the Ravens offense, as insane as this may seem, I don't too much care who is at quarterback. If Lamar is healthy, give me Lamar, no question. But if Lamar is, at like 80% where he's been for a lot of this year, Tyler Huntley might actually be better, to be completely honest. Lamar has not been good when he is not at a healthy level, so that is interesting to have, even in discussion. I would say that Lamar at 80% has been better than Rodgers all year, but again, I would take Huntley over Lamar, so the fact that you could even really have that conversation is bad in regards to Pittsburgh, where you're saying the injured quarterback for the other team is, competently viable compared to what you have, but it's also bad because we know Rodgers is not good, so that tells you that Lamar has not been too good. The fact that he's been maybe just a tier max better than Rodgers, that's not too good to see. The thing with Huntley that would be particularly relevant if Jackson is not healthy is he does give you a bit more rushing capacity than a hurt Lamar would, and that is how the Ravens are going to do their damage. They have been really good at running the rock this year. They are first in rushing expected points added. That matches up really nicely with the Steelers, 21st in stopping the run. That's great. Lamar also could be, tricky in that he might want to extend plays more than he should. He has a 3.1 second time to throw compared to Rodgers' 2.6. So Lamar could be getting them into a little bit of trouble where Baltimore really doesn't have a good line. And the Steelers have a solid pass rush. It's not anywhere near what it's been in years past with Watt falling off and then also Watt being injured, but it still can get after you. And there are some really nice matchups there because the interior is what's weakest for the Ravens. You have Voorhees and you also have Falele as weaklings in the interior, and honestly, Linderbaum's not a great pass protector. He's fine, but he's not great. So anybody there can be, compromised. You get the great Cam Hayward, maybe the best defensive tackle this year. That could be really ugly for Baltimore. Pressure from the interior is the worst type of pressure. regardless of who you're talking, unless Lamar can just absolutely outrun it, which could neutralize it some. But for the most part, you do not ever want to see pressure up the middle right away, and Cam is very liable to do that. If it's not him, Keanu Benton, also good. So there could be some pressure coming up the middle. Derek Harmon, he can get after the quarterback a little bit when he's not getting thrown to the ground in the run game. So there are some real threats there. And, Alex Highsmith, really good. Nick Herbig, really good. So there are some, reasons to think that Stanley, and I'm drawing a blank on the right tackle's name right now, but the good tackle duo they have might not be Rosengarten. He might not be, looking as good in either of those regards, because Highsmith and Herbig, really tough to go against. Watt, if he is healthy, if he gets rotated in, still not a bad edge rusher, just, not what he once was. So the Ravens do have that offense as something they can have, not just strictly going to rely on some ugly stuff. They will more than likely have some ground success, be it through their own success, be it through the Steelers being incompetent at stopping it. But there is also some notion of the Ravens passing, as Flowers is a much safer bet than James Pierre for the Steelers. Pierre, inexplicably, I must say, first in PFF man coverage. The one thing that makes it explicable, not just inexplicable, is that it's very limited snaps. He's playing about half what most people are. He's got like 200 coverage snaps. Most people are at like 400 plus. So there is that. That could be skewing the data, but Pierre has been good in the sample size that he's been in. So that is something that could neutralize Flowers. And honestly, Joey Porter, he's been pretty bad so far in his career. He was okay as a rookie and then bad year 2. He's pretty good this year. He's 15th in PFF man coverage grade. The Steelers do run a lot of man, so Hopkins is going to have to work for it. Honestly, I do like Flowers over Pierre because of, again, a better baseline of play, but there could be a world where the Steelers do take that advantage in the receiver matchup for the Ravens, because Porter has been better than Hopkins this year. Pierre in limited snaps has been better than Flowers. So that is something. A little bit dicey, though, for the Steelers is that Echols is more than likely going to have to get matched up against Likely, which is a big size discrepancy. Echols being pretty conventional nickel, Likely being a not undersized tight end, not being the biggest, but still being a legit tight end. So that could be a little bit weird. Andrews is going to be out there a lot with Likely, you figure, so the Steelers don't have the greatest stuff to stop the tight ends. There is, some hope there, but it seems, weirdly enough, like the corners have been more of a thing. So that is going to be a little bit wonky to figure out, with, particularly Ramsey being kind of just like a free safety off the ball nowadays, not really even able to do too much in man. So it will be really a big game for tight ends, you figure. You're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets for both sides. The Steelers, out of necessity. The Ravens just probably having the better matchups there. So all of that boils down to the conclusion of which side are you taking. You're taking the home team in the Steelers, the team that's used to playing ugly football, the team that refuses to not make it to the playoffs to get embarrassed in the first round. You take the Ravens, who are just a dicey proposition because sometimes they don't look like an NFL caliber team, and then sometimes they lure you in by being like, yeah, they actually do have some talent, so maybe they can put it together. Just beat the brakes off the Packers. I'm taking the Ravens. Not really too much conflicting for me on that. I think, the Packers thing is nice. I'm not really holding on to that, though. It's just, I do like this roster a fair amount more. I know the results haven't been indicative of that because, lots of injuries and meaningful ways for the Ravens, but I do think even on the road, I think that talent discrepancy shows. I think that, regardless of if it's Lamar, healthy, unhealthy, whatever, Huntley, I think that they are going to have the edge at quarterback. There is something to be said about the Steelers living for these ugly games. They are better equipped for it, and, the home field advantage being, say, worth 2.5 points, and, the expected, output for these teams is like 20 points each. That kind of becomes more of a thing than like a shootout situation, but I really feel like I have to talk myself into this. Maybe if DK wasn't such an idiot and he was here, that could play, a part into things. You could convince yourself the Steelers, but I feel like you really have to do some gymnastics to feel good about them. So I'm taking the Ravens here. Not too concerned. I think, there are some things that make you worried, especially just their own volatility. But I think overall the Ravens are definitely the play here. Thank you for watching. Be sure to watch the much more entertaining Seahawks and Niners preview I did. That's just a much better game. So be sure to watch that. Thank you for watching. Be sure to treat yourself like a friend. And also be sure to subscribe for more content and like the video if you haven't already.